Hey everyone, it's Ankylosaur. I hope you're all doing well. Today, I've got another competitive Pauper EDH video for you all, this time on the fastest wins the format is capable of. These aren't decks that are always going to win before turn 4, but dream with me a little here. These are perfect 7-card hands, no interaction from the opponents, just destroying your pet goldfish in a game of Magic type scenarios. The chances of these happening is incredibly slim, but not at all impossible. So today I wanted to highlight some of the best and quickest the format has to offer. I have 4 decks for you today. And before we jump in, I wanted to shout out Puzzlebox, Gatorbait TV, and especially Jonathan, who all either designed or at least helped to popularize these decks in the format, and who wrote primers for these lists over on Moxfield that were instrumental in putting this video together. I'll have links to each of the decks down below in the video description, and I hope you'll go and give them a like and a follow over on Moxfield afterwards. So, with the intro out of the way, let's jump right into the fastest wins in CPDH. Our first deck is the only non-combo deck we're talking about today, and that's Dargo Kedis Red Deck Wins Aggro. And I know what you're thinking. How quickly can an aggro deck with no infinite combos, built with only commons outside the command zone, kill an entire table's worth of players? In CPDH, we play with 30 life each and 16 commander damage. So that's a total of 90 damage we have to deal in order to win our pod. So how fast of a deck is Dargo Kedis? If everything goes right, they can win on turn number 3. Turn 3! Let me show you how. Turn 1, we're going to cast our first commander, Dargo. He's a 7-drop, but whenever we sacrifice something, we reduce his cost by 2 generic mana. So what we're going to do is play a mountain, tap it, to cast a 1-drop that makes us 2 permanents. In this case, Flare Husk. Next, we'll cast a Lotus Petal, and tap and sacrifice it for a red mana. Now we'll use that red mana, and sacrifice the Flare Husk and the Germ Token to bring out Dargo. This works because Dargo tracks all sacrifices made over the course of a turn. So our Lotus Petal is actually sort of like a Jeweled Lotus, counting for the red mana we need to cast Dargo, and also 2 mana worth of cost reduction when we sack it, which is pretty neat. Turn 2, we need to get our Lizard Friend into play as well. So we'll play another mountain, and tap them both to cast Kedis. Now, we attack someone for 7 with Dargo. This damage will trigger Kedis' ability, which reads, whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. So all of a sudden, with just 1 combat, we've dealt 21 damage to all of our opponents. Turn 3, we're going to try to seal the deal. So, we play our 3rd land, and tap all 3 for mana. We cast a Brute Force, which is a red planar chaos version of Giant Growth, giving Dargo +3 power. Then we cast our finisher, Buccaneer's Bravado. This spell gives a pirate +1/+1 and double strike until end of turn. As Dargo just happens to be a pirate, he's now an 11/10 trampling double striker until end of turn. We swing with both of our commanders, and we connect. Dargo deals 22 damage, and Kedis deals 1. Because Dargo and Kedis are both our commanders, Kedis triggers on both of them, dealing that much damage to each of our opponents. That's 66 damage this turn from Dargo, 3 from Kedis, and if you add that to the 21 damage we did on turn 2, that's exactly 90 on turn 3. Not too bad for mono red. The next deck I want to talk about is the first of our 3 combo decks, and that is Gretchen Titchwillow. Gretchen is a very redundant combo deck that can generate a lot of card advantage over the course of a game by building up mana, activating her ability a few times a turn, drawing cards, and grinding into the late game with a lot of interaction to protect her combo lines. But what if she just has it all in her opening hand? In that case, Gretchen can pop off and win the game as early as turn 2. Here's how you do it. First, we play a forest, and we tap it for a green to cast our best mana dork, Arbor Elf. That's it. That's turn 1. I know you were expecting like 12 things to happen, but no, it's just an Arbor Elf. Turn 2, though, is where everything happens. We play another forest, and tap one of them to cast a Utopia Sprawl on the other. As Utopia Sprawl comes into play, we name a color of mana that it will produce, so we'll choose blue. Next, we'll tap that forest and float a green and blue mana. We tap our Arbor Elf to untap the enchanted forest, and tap it again, adding another green and another blue. Then we use a blue and both green mana to cast Freed from the Real on our Arbor Elf. This allows us to pay 1 blue mana to untap our Arbor Elf. We'll do that, and then tap the elf again to untap the enchanted forest. We tap the forest again and generate another blue and green. Use the blue to untap the elf, tap the elf to untap the enchanted forest, and so on. As we're using a blue mana to untap the elf with Freed from the Real, each time we do this, we'll generate another green mana, giving us infinite green to work with. Finally, we have one more card to play, and that's a land aura that also lets us generate an extra blue each loop. In this case, I chose Fertile Ground because I like the pumpkin art, but it could be any of a number of them in the deck. Now, when we tap the Enchanted Forest, we'll be able to repeat the process of untapping it with the Arbor Elf, untapping the elf with Freed from the Real, tapping the forest again for 2 blue and a green, and so on until we have infinite blue mana as well. So, what do we do with our infinite mana? Well, we cast Gretchen. This will let us activate her ability as many times as we want, drawing through our deck until we hit our win conditions. First, we can capsize with buyback all of our opponent's permanents back to their hands. Though, as this is turn 2, no one should have anything too scary in play. Then we cast Compulsive Research, targeting one of our opponents to draw 3 cards. Then we cast Archaeomancer, returning the Compulsive Research to our hand to make somebody else draw 3 cards. Then we cast Capsize with buyback, targeting our Archaeomancer, returning it to our hand. Archaeomancer gets back the Compulsive Research again, Capsize gets back the Archaeomancer, and we keep looping Compulsive Research this way an infinite number of times, targeting our opponents to make them draw their entire decks and lose the game on the spot. This same Arbor Elf Freed from the Real combo is also available in a few other decks as well, including the Weavers. Replacing the Compulsive Research kill line with the Lore Weaver's activated ability to deck the whole table, if you prefer that style of deck. Turn 2 kills in a format based around commons are super exciting and everything, but what if I told you we could go even faster? This is Malcolm Rograk, the speediest version of the Malcolm Red decks, as we get a handful of cards such as Springleaf Drum, Moonsnare Prototype, and Infernal Plunge that let us use Rograk to generate extra mana, letting us ramp ahead a little faster than the other Malcolm decks, if all goes well. As this video is all about things going well, that means we can combo off and kill the whole table as early as turn 1. First, let me show you a turn 2 kill to demonstrate the basics of the pirate combo. Turn 1, we're going to cast both of our commanders as well as our first combo piece. We'll play a mountain, and we'll cast Rograk for free. Next, tap that mountain, and sacrifice Rograk for an Infernal Plunge. That'll give us 3 red mana to work with. We'll cast a Lotus Petal, then sacrifice the petal and use 2 of our floating mana to cast Malcolm. Finally, we'll exile a Simian Spirit Guide from our hand to generate 1 last red mana, which we'll use to cast Reckless Fireweaver. This will get us all set up to win next turn. All we have to do is attack with Malcolm, which, when he deals combat damage to an opponent, gives us a treasure token because he's a pirate. The treasure entering the battlefield will trigger Reckless Fireweaver to deal 1 damage to each of our opponents. But with that trigger on the stack, we have a response. We'll sacrifice our treasure to cast Trickery Charm, targeting our Fireweaver, choosing the mode to make target creature the creature type of our choice until end of turn. We'll choose Pirate. Now, we'll let the Fireweaver trigger resolve. This deals 1 damage to each of our opponents and gives us 3 treasure tokens. Because these are artifacts, they each trigger Reckless Fireweaver again, dealing 3 more damage to each of our opponents, creating 3 more treasure tokens, and again, dealing 3 damage, creating 3 more treasure tokens, on and on, until all of our opponents are dead. That's cool and all, but I was talking with Jonathan about this deck, and he mentioned he had discovered a way to go even faster. To speed this up to a turn 1 kill, we need both a perfect opening 7 plus a top-decked 8th card. This is truly the most magical of Christmas lands that we're living in, but here's how you do it. You start the same with an Infernal Plunge on Rogue Rack, cast from a Simian Spirit Guide. Use that 3 red mana to cast a Seething Song, then a Rite of Flame for 6 total mana. 3 of that red mana will go to Pendragon Strongbull, while 2 more red plus a blue from Seed of the Synod will go to casting Malcolm. Then, with a Lotus Petal, you can cast Trickery Charm, turning the Minotaur into a pirate. Use the last red mana to sacrifice the seat with Pendragon's ability, which deals 1 damage to each opponent and creates 3 treasures from Malcolm's trigger, which will give you more sacrifice fodder and more mana to continue activating Pendragon again and again and again until you are victorious. Finally, for our last deck, this is Dargo Kesket, a pairing of commanders that, at first glance, looks like it's trying to grind into the long game. We play Kesket, we sacrifice some creatures for value, we draw some cards, and eventually play a cheap Dargo to close out the game. But this is actually one of the fastest combo decks in the format, with a handful of lines that will win on the very first turn of the game. How do we pull it off? Well, let's take a look at Pauper EDH's Ultimate Turbo deck. It all begins with another turn 1 Dargo, which the deck can achieve in a number of ways due to the prevalence of 0-drop creatures in the list as free sacrifice fodder. In this case, we'll play a Great Furnace, a Lotus Petal, and a Crimson Kobolds to get set up. We'll tap the Great Furnace for a red mana, then sacrifice the Lotus Petal for a black. That counts as 1 sacrifice this turn, and we can use our red mana to sack our other 2 permanents to cast Dargo. Now, it's time to combo. We'll use our floating black mana to cast a card called Burnt Offering, sacrificing Dargo as an additional cost. Burnt Offering is this old instant from Ice Age that lets us sacrifice a creature to add an amount of red or black mana equal to its mana value. So, we'll choose to add 7 red mana and resolve the spell, sending Dargo back to the command zone. We use 5 of that red mana to see a card that doesn't see much play in Thermopod. And finally, as we have 4 sacrifices this turn, we use 1 of our remaining red to recast Dargo. Now, Thermopod has an activated ability that reads, sacrifice a creature, add a red mana to our mana pool. With Dargo, that means we can sacrifice our giant pirate, add a red, and then send Dargo back to the command zone. Since each time we sacrifice Dargo reduces Dargo's cost by 2 mana, we can recast him again for 1 red mana. Then we sacrifice him again, get another red mana, recast him, and so on until we have an infinitely large storm count. As you'll notice, we still have 1 red floating from the Burnt Offering. So on our last iteration of the combo, we'll sacrifice Dargo again, go up to 2 red, and cast Grape Shot, storm count 1 trillion, and take out our opponents for the win. So there you have it. These are the fastest decks that I could find in the format, though I'm sure that there are others out there with dream hands that could rival these 4. Do you have a list that could win on turn 3 or earlier? Please leave a comment down below and let me know. I'd love to take a look at it. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, so long.